This is Still a Part of Us, a podcast where moms and dads share the story of their child who was stillborn or who died in infancy. I'm Winter Red, and in this episode of Advice and Encouragement from a Lost Mom, I chat with Ashley, whose son Thomas was stillborn at 20 weeks for unknown reasons. By the way, you can hear Ashley's episode about the birth of her child on episode 48. Today we discuss with Ashley how grief doesn't leave you, but rather you take grief with you. How having some structure really helps her get back on her feet, and that she appreciates anyone who doesn't give her that look and allows her to share about Thomas. As a word of caution to our listeners, this discussion contains emotional triggers of stillbirth and infant loss. Please keep yourself emotionally and mentally healthy and seek help if needed. Hope this helps someone out there. I know it's one of those things where it's like, after we've done this many times and recorded and interviewed, and after the interviews, it always feels like, oh, I gotta go take a nap now. It's a lot.
It's a lot, and it's a lot of emotion that comes at you.
Yeah. You're like, where did this
But
come
I will
from?
say, I think finding your guys' podcast has helped me for sure. Just kind of get a lot of emotion out. I listen to it a lot in the car. I travel a lot for work.
Uh-huh.
Well, when there isn't a global pandemic,
Of
I travel
course.
a lot for work.
Right.
To other colleges, and I listen to it. And there are times, I will be honest with you, I will listen to stories and cry all the way to where I'm going, and then get where I'm going and kind of
freshen up a minute.
But then I'm okay, because it's kind of just like that release.
Yeah.
I think
I know
I needed.
There's been times when I've noticed that I do need to have almost a trigger, like something to like get me going, because it's been almost 2 years now, and I feel like the time has helped. It's made the pain a little different. It's made the grief look a little different for us, and but was it 2 days ago? I swear I could not stop crying like all day.
Oh.
It was one of those days, and I'm like, I have not had one of those days where I was like involuntarily crying for I think a year. Like I had not. I was like, what's wrong with me?
Yeah, I feel like last week I had one of those days where it didn't matter what it was, and I think my friends can read me really well, because it started with one of my friends sent me a TED Talk about grief, and she talks about she had lost her husband, her dad, and her baby all within like a year, and she talks about how you take the grief with you, that you don't get over it, you don't move on from it, and you take it with you. And that's what people have to understand, because you wouldn't look at someone with a child who celebrates their birthday and after 5 years be like, okay, let's just get over this now, move on.
That is a great way of putting it.
Yeah, we don't do this with the happy stuff. We shouldn't expect people to do it with the sad stuff.
Yeah. It still sticks with you.
Yeah.
Well, with that thought, Ashley, welcome to the podcast again.
Yeah.
If you have not heard Ashley's story of her sweet little Thomas, please definitely check out her birth story episode that we published a little earlier. But thank you, Ashley, for coming on and chatting with us and giving us a little bit of information, because I'm going to just start because of the fact that you were just talking about this TED Talk and how the grief comes with you. You take it with you, and is maybe a little bit more ignored and not acknowledged in our society, which is a bummer.
It is.
But hopefully we're doing our part in talking about it today. So
I feel like you were a blessing for me. I can remember it was probably that same week or that following week after we had come home from having Thomas, and I can remember just like typing it into the podcast thinking, there's no way.
A lot of people have said that.
I just so desperately like wanted to hear somebody else, say what I was feeling, so I didn't feel like I was so alone or crazy for feeling the way I was feeling.
Yeah.
And there you guys were. And
yeah.
And I listen. I I probably don't listen as much now as I did before. Like I said, with the pandemic, I don't travel as much, and I keep your guys' podcast very very close to my heart, and it's just something for me. I don't really I don't share.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's funny. I tell
yeah,
people, they're like, hey, I've been listening to your podcast. I was like, why are you listening to my podcast? You should not be listening to my podcast unless you've had something like this happen. It is like super sad. Why are you doing that?
it is sad. It
And,
is sad.
but it's also
It's
very, there's a lot of hope in it. I feel like when I chat with
yeah,
other moms and dads, it feels really, I don't know, hopeful. It feels like, oh gosh, I'm not alone. I'm not.
it does. It does because I I feel like to a certain degree, am very lucky. My work community, they were wonderful. My family has been as wonderful as they can be without really understanding. And, but I still, even with all of that, just felt just completely by myself.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I feel like if you haven't experienced it, then it's just like, okay.
yeah,
They're doing the best they can to try and help as much as they
yeah,
can. So,
they are.
um, Ashley, tell me, as a little bit of context, can you tell me how long ago your child was born at the time of this recording?
7 months and 2 days.
7 months and 2 days. So you are still extremely new.
Yeah,
And that first year is rough, man.
it is.
And how,
It is.
it sounds like you have had a really good support system at work and at home with your family and friends.
Hmm.
Um,
Probably more so at work, even.
really?
Yeah, I work in a small office, and everybody has just been, when your supervisor comes in that first day back to work and asks, are you sure you're ready to be back? You
Yeah.
probably should have taken more time. And then gives you permission to close the doors of your office and cry for 10 or 15 minutes if you need to. I mean, not everywhere has that, especially not my husband's
Yeah.
employer. I cannot say that I give them raving reviews in handling this situation at all with us, but um, the college has been wonderful
That's
with
great.
me.
So
Yeah,
it sounds like you did take some time off and you took,
I
I'm
did.
assuming some FMLA or something like that.
Well, I'm a new employee,
Okay.
so my 1 year date is this August.
Oh,
So
okay.
I just took whatever vacation time I had.
Mm-hmm.
So it was about 2 weeks.
Oh, good.
Um,
Okay.
and I probably could have taken longer, but I needed some structure in my days. I needed a reason besides my children to kind of get up and take a shower and get dressed, because I was getting up and taking care of the girls, but it wasn't like if I wanted to stay in my pajamas all day, the 2-year-old's not going to tell me I need to get dressed. I mean, I needed some structure,
Yeah.
and
And
you know,
routine.
yes,
It's amazing what a shower will do for a person.
it is. It is, especially when you found yourself thinking, I wonder when the last time I got in the shower was, because you just are, it's just the last thing on your
Yeah.
mind.
We just don't care about that. It's just, yeah, falls
Yeah.
down on the list for sure.
Yeah.
So you did take some time off and then you headed back to work.
Mhm.
And it sounds like they are great. It sounds like
They
they
were.
have given you a lot
They
of
are.
flexibility and
Yeah.
to mourn and think about Thomas.
Yes.
Any other things that you try and do to take some time to grieve when you need to grieve within the last 7 months?
I see a counselor,
Okay.
and I'm a therapy advocate.
Yeah,
I'm
go
also,
therapy.
I also take my meds. I'm a big medicine advocate too. I feel like there's no shame in it if you need it.
Yeah.
And like I said, I have family that lives very, very close, and she's my cousin, but she's like an older sister. And you know, if I need to talk, I just text and say, I need to go for a walk. And I walk down to her house, and then she walks with me because our neighborhood's like a big circle.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, so we just walk the circle, and I can just talk and cry and be mad or whatever. emotion I'm needing to work through, she allows me to do that,
That's pretty
which
cool.
helps.
Yeah, I was like,
Yeah.
that's really great that she has given you the permission to kind of be that sounding board.
Yeah. And she's the person who has checked in on like on me when it's like different holidays, and we just had Mother's Day, and like, she texts me because it's the first one since having Thomas, and just days like that not everybody would think I might be struggling just a little bit with. She, kind of knows, and just a little note, hey, how are you doing? Are you holding up okay? Which is huge.
That
It's huge.
it is huge, like those little gestures, and
Hmm.
especially when right after your loss, there's always an influx of notes and things that people want to do to help,
Yes.
and but then it kind of trickles off. So those notes later down the line are really so important, I think.
Yes,
So
they
kind.
are. Yeah.
Do you have anything that you have kept physically, any little tokens or stuffed animals or anything like that that you try and have around or represent
So
Thomas for you guys?
I struggled a lot with the fact that Hazel would not remember,
Yeah.
would not know unless, we talked about him a lot. My husband is, his grief process, I guess, is more of not talking about it. If we don't talk about it, then he can find a way to move forward with, his day to day. And so I try to be conscious of that because that's not how I grieve. And I try to be conscious of that. And he does allow me to talk to him about Thomas, but I try not to take advantage.
Yeah.
So I was really worried about talking to Hazel about it or telling her about it. And my good friend, who her and I were pregnant at the same time, my mom had come over when we came home and helped me clean out, this little bit of stuff that we had collected. And I just needed her to do that for me and to take that on. I couldn't do it, but that friend ended up coming and getting the box of clothes
Okay.
for her little boy. And they're Cardinals fans and we're Cubs fans. We're
Oh.
both big baseball families. So there was a bunch of Cubs onesies
Right.
and PJs. And so she took those and made a teddy bear
Oh,
for Hazel so that someday I'll be able to tell Hazel, when she's can understand, I can tell her about her brother and I can say, these were, his clothes, his things. And not that he wore anything. He was so teeny tiny there. We didn't, and everything happened so quickly. We didn't take anything to the hospital. I do have a white Afghan from the hospital that I was wrapped in
yeah.
that I have. But yeah, the teddy bear and the Afghan from the hospital that he was wrapped in, those are really two of the most special things that I have.
That's great. So, and Hazel, just to let everybody know, is about 18 months old, isn't she? Oh, I guess
She she was when
Thomas was
she was
born.
when he was born. She just had her second birthday,
Just
April
recently.
18th.
Okay, so she's just two, so she's really
Yeah,
little, and
she is.
probably would not understand much of this. So,
No, no.
that's really nice having a little physical, a little stuffy, basically, to
Yeah,
so that she'll have some sort of remembrance or something to reference later when you are
yeah,
ready to talk to her about that.
yeah.
So your husband, Chad, sounds like has not been as supported at his work. And is this
Yeah, no.
so he just probably went straight back to work right after?
They gave him 2 days,
Hmm.
which is, in my opinion, not long enough.
I know. I'm
And then
yeah. Hmm.
they wanted proof of his death, so they wanted us to produce a death certificate right away.
Hmm.
That does not happen.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen. And they bought, I mean, I think they asked him on a regular basis until I finally could go to the health department
And actually get
and
it because it takes time for
Mhm.
that paperwork to go
It
through.
does. I mean, but to even have to go, I remember I was so in the depths of just everything. I mean, just really deeply sad and just down. And I had to walk into this health department by myself and say, I need a copy of my son's death certificate. Like, and I just, to think about it now, it just seems so like strange. Like it was almost like an out of body experience, like a dream, to have to
Mm-hmm.
stand there and say, I need this.
Yeah. That's that's rough. And
Yeah.
so you've mentioned that your husband usually does not talk much about Thomas. And
No,
is that
not really.
generally how I just think some people, and I'm not just saying guys, but some people are just not as sharey. They just don't share as much or they're not
Yeah.
as vocal about their feelings. Is he just kind of that type of person?
Yeah.
Okay.
He most definitely is.
Okay. Okay. So
Yes.
he just was because as um people may know as when this episode comes out that Chad did not record an episode with us, which
Yeah.
is totally fine. I think he opted and we always obviously give there's choices to be made and so he doesn't feel like he needs to share and so but as you've watched him grieve and mourn, have you seen him act differently, you think, because of Thomas's death? Do you know what I'm saying? I've seen grief manifest itself in a lot of different really ways with my husband because sometimes
Yeah.
he's not as vocal about it either. But he
No.
things will come out in different ways because of it. Like it can express itself in maybe obsessing over some things or kind of getting a little angry or whatever happens to be.
Yeah. He's definitely, he used to be the parent, with Hazel. I was always kind of like helicoptery mom
Mhm. Mhm.
and he was less like that now. She wants to climb the ladder on the playset and go down the slide and do all these things, and
Mhm.
he's right there like glue, where he probably before this would have been like, okay, go up the ladder, you're fine. you know um he's just more attentive, I think, in that way.
Sounds like a little bit
he
more protective even.
I think so. I think so. That's really the major thing that I've really picked up on, is that he's just a little more protective, just wants to hold on a little tighter to
Mm,
his little girl.
yeah. Well, that in itself is kind of sweet. It's a
Yeah,
way of
it is.
showing love and how he's able to process things himself. So,
Yeah.
so you did mention that we just had Mother's Day. At the
Yeah.
time of this recording, we just had Mother's Day,
Yes.
and I don't know about you, but Mother's Day was a little rough for me. For part of the day, how were you?
Yeah.
How are
Yeah. It was rough because I only had part of my children here.
yeah,
I mean,
that's right.
because my older girls, I had mentioned in the last episode, they are spending a month with their dad
Mhm.
after spending a month with me because of the pandemic. We just figured that was the safest way to go about it
Yeah.
instead of the every other week. So we only had Hazel, uh, and so that was rough to not have all three
Mhm.
girls here, and then just thinking about what it would look like if I would have had Thomas here, to have a little bitty and a toddler running around. But the weather here in Illinois was also horrible,
Oh.
and so we couldn't be outside.
Mhm.
And
So it's like, let's just have a bad day altogether.
I pretty much. I mean, we had a nice dinner and stuff, but I can't really say that we were like outwardly acknowledging that it was Mother's Day. I mean, Chad let me sleep in, which was great, and we had a really nice dinner, but really we just kind of went on like it was a regular day because the weather was junk, and
Yeah.
I was just really not in a celebrating a
Mhm.
celebrating mood. And I'm not sure about you, but for me, when the weather is just yucky out, it just brings on all those kind of sad
Yeah.
reminders.
Yeah, all the emotions match the outside.
Yeah.
The weather. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, do you Father's Day is coming up here pretty soon and it will have
hmm
passed by the time this episode comes out. But how are you going to are you going to do anything special for Chad or how's that going to look, you think?
I don't know. I don't know. He loves to golf, so hopefully the golf courses will be opened up, and I probably will just give him a gift card so he can get
He
out
can
for the
just
day,
be.
because that is kind of how he recharges, is to
Okay.
be out and golfing. And it's funny, he got Hazel a little Tykes golf set, and every day it's down in our basement. Every day he's like, "You want to go hit golf balls?" And she started to get to the point where she's like, "No, yeah, no." But
That's
yeah, I'll
cute.
probably. I mean, we might have a nice dinner, or I'll make it so he doesn't have to do any cooking. Or I mean, he's like the grill master in our house, so I'll try to attempt to do that so he doesn't have to. I might be safer to let him do it, though. I don't know.
If he likes doing it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you'll be coming up on his first birthday by the time this episode is
Yeah.
about to
And
air. And have you thought about that? I mean, I know you're still just 7 months out, but gosh, it
yeah,
creeps up on you before you know
it
it.
does. I'm sure it does. And you know, it's going to be kind of a weird time for me because Thomas was born on October 11th, and my niece will turn 4 on October 12th.
Oh, okay.
So it's just hard. Because I will be so excited to celebrate my niece, but in the same token, I'm going to probably be completely heartbroken. I can only imagine what a year out will look like.
Yeah.
I think I'll have a hard time with the fact that it's been a year.
Yeah.
But then having to kind of, like I said, put on that face that says, I'm okay. I'm here. So I guess, and I don't know what exactly the world will look like in October.
Right. Of course. Yeah. The world is
You know.
is changing rapidly and also
Yes.
slowly at the same time. It's just, yeah. Yeah, I make sure you just give yourself a lot of grace on those days of when you found out that he passed away and
Yeah.
on his birthday. Like, or you can just don't have any plans. Just let it be what it is.
I have yet to take my older girls to the cemetery.
Oh,
And
really?
so I thought about taking them out there on on his
Mhm. Mhm.
birthday and kind of sharing that with them and making it something special. I kind of was waiting for them to ask and like say, okay, we're ready. But maybe they're waiting for me to ask them
Yeah.
too, because I mean they're older, so it's hard
Yeah.
to decide. But maybe we'll just go out there and have a cupcake or something.
Yeah. That's always nice.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
cemeteries are always pretty lovely too. Is the cemetery
yeah.
close to your home?
It's in Peoria, so
Okay.
it's like 20 minutes
Okay, so it's not
away.
too far. Good.
It's just a little space that the hospital has specifically for the babies.
Yeah.
And really, quite honestly, it's in a really pretty spot as far as cemeteries go.
Yay.
So
That's
yeah,
good. That's good. Yeah, we live very close to our cemetery where our son is born, and so it's nice to just be able to walk over there and be with
yeah,
him.
I struggle just a little bit with him being there because that's probably not where we will end up. And again, that's why I go back to knowing he's with other little babies, and because I think I would have a really hard time to know he was alone.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Ugh, it's
yeah.
it's so hard. It's so hard. So, Ashley, tell me some things that people have done that have really helped you, that have been significant, or that have helped you through this process, because this is tough. This is tough.
Well, obviously, anybody who allows me to talk about Thomas without getting that look on their face, I'm sure you've seen when you
Uh-huh.
say, you know, I have a son who is stillborn, and then people just are like, oh, completely shocked, and then as the mom, you're like, okay, I can't talk, I can't really talk about this the way I would like to, and so anybody really who allows me to just talk about him as much as I want or as little or share what I need to. I have two very, very best friends that I grew up with, and I did take them out to see him at the cemetery, and I can remember them just saying thank you for sharing him with me, and it was very special because I felt like I was sharing him. When you
Mhm.
bring your baby home, you share them with everybody, and
Yeah.
it was that was really special to just feel like I was actually able to share him with them.
Yeah, that's great. I know
Yeah.
I've always appreciated people that are that want to talk about my son. So I think
Yeah.
that's great. Anything that don't call anybody out. But has there been anything that somebody said or done that you're like, maybe you shouldn't say that to somebody that just had a loss like this?
Oh goodness.
This is always a
I,
loaded question a little bit, but it's
it
always
is a
like
little bit.
it's helpful to I know different people will take things different ways, but there's a handful of things that have been a common theme that I've
Yeah,
noticed.
well, I mean, obviously, I think asking somebody about whether they're going to expand their family or not after something like this is very personal and probably doesn't need to be talked about. Not that we had a lot of that in the hospital. We had that, but we haven't had a lot of that. I can remember being, and I almost feel bad, but I was angry at someone for saying how brave I was. And that seems silly, but I didn't choose this. I
Hmm.
didn't walk this road to have a badge of honor. I
Yeah.
walked this road because I had no choice but to walk this road. And so I don't feel as if I'm brave. Um, I feel like I'm surviving one day at a time, one
Hmm.
second at a time. Um, but I think really people just need to remember it doesn't make us sad to mention our babies' names.
Hmm.
And the most important thing for me, and I'm sure for other moms out there in this situation, knowing our babies mattered. And so I mean, even if you say Thomas's name and it brings a tear to my eye, it still brings joy to my heart because
Yeah.
he's still my baby
Yeah.
and always will be. And so I think a lot of times what we just need is somebody to just take our hand and sit with us. I mean, there doesn't have to be a lot of words.
Yeah.
I can remember people asking me what I wanted a lot after, which also upset me because what I really wanted was my baby to be
Yeah.
alive
And
and
that's not happening.
not
So,
be
yeah.
here. And I know they didn't mean it maliciously and they probably were even unconsciously asking me that, but those are probably a couple of major things that I just, that bothered me or still kind of do bother me. I think I'm learning to
Yeah. People
process it all.
people mean well, right? They mean well,
They
but they don't.
do.
Yeah.
They do.
There's a
But
lot of things that made me angry that I'm like, I think I've said this stuff to some people that have been in my similar situation and had no idea what I was saying. So,
yeah, but, and you don't know what you say will affect somebody else either. I mean, that's just for me personally. It may not be the same
yeah.
for somebody else.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Exactly. Have you had any thoughts about any aha moments about yourself or
oh yeah. Since all this started, yeah,
yes.
yeah. Um, I mean, I've lost my grandparents who I
Hmm.
was very close to, and I don't think I ever really grieved at all. I think I learned through this and forcing myself to grieve and to acknowledge that he is gone and that this is how my world looks and to realize that the person I was before Thomas is not the person I am now. But I would make myself very, very busy just in general, so I didn't have to think or be sad or, come to terms with really how I was feeling emotionally. And I have worked very hard with, my counselor and myself and, just to not let myself get sunk into work or my other kids or in their activities. And I guess a pandemic will help you with that too because
Hmm.
there are no activities.
Hmm. Yep.
But you know my boss, that's what he was really worried about when I did go back, was that I was coming back and I was going to sink myself so heavily into work that I didn't allow myself to really feel. And I've worked really hard to feel sad and it's okay, and to remind myself it's okay to not be okay.
Yeah. Those are some wise words because when you were saying that, I was like, gosh, I kind of do that too. Like I just,
Mm-hmm.
just cram things in so that you don't have a
Yep.
chance to think a thought, feel a feeling. It's
Yep.
just so easy to ignore it.
It is. And I definitely am human, and like anybody else, I have days where I do not want to go to counseling. I don't want to sit and do that, but I will make myself do it. Especially now it's hard to Zoom with your counselor.
Oh yeah.
So,
It's just not the same, I
but
think.
yeah. So I do make myself do that because obviously it's good for me, but it makes me take time for me because I'm not good about that either.
Yeah. Well, good. I'm glad that you came to that realization. Yeah, just taking that time for yourself,
Yeah.
slowing down a minute.
Yeah.
Like you said, the pandemic's kind of been helping.
Yeah.
You really do just have a little bit more time with your thoughts, and I think
Yeah.
that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing
Not
at all.
always.
Is there anything else you want to tell anybody that about where you what it's been like, and if there's anything you could lend to somebody else that is in a similar situation?
Ask for help. Ask because it's there. I mean, in our area, I definitely had to look for it, but ask because there are people in places that are out there to help. And if you need to talk about your babies, talk about your babies. And I think it comes a time when we have to just do what's right for us. And if that's talking about your babies, then that's talking about your babies.
Yeah. Yeah. Ashley, thank you so much. It's been delightful
Thank
chatting
you.
with you. I really have just emailed you several times, and just
Yeah.
meeting you has been delightful, and I just feel your warmth, and
Thank
um,
you.
I am so happy to know you, unfortunately under these kind of circumstances, but I'm happy to know you.
Same. I'm definitely glad that I found you guys and that you allowed me to share Thomas with everybody.
Oh, for sure. We are so happy to know Thomas. So thanks, Ashley.
Thank you.
Once again, we want to thank Ashley for just a great conversation and sharing Thomas and what her grief has looked like in the last little bit since he passed away. We want to encourage you to head on over to our website, stillapartofus.com, where you can find our show notes, as well as you can sign up for an email newsletter, and also how you can become a patron of the work that it takes to produce this show for just a few dollars a month. And lastly, if you want to get in touch with us to share your child's story, then please reach out. Our email is stillapartofus@gmail.com. The show was produced and edited by Winter and Lee Red. Thanks to Josh Woodward for letting us use his song, Vanishing Note. You can find him at joshwoodward.com. Lastly, subscribe to this podcast and share it with a friend that might need it, and tell them to subscribe. Why? Because people need to know that even though our babies are no longer with us, they're still a part of us.
I can't understand why a person will take a year to write a novel when he could easily buy one for a few dollars. Fred Allen.